Hello, everyone. I'm Rory, and I wanted to take some time to recap my recent trip to the EUIC 2026 in London, England. Um, this is my third year that I've been, and it's also why I've kind of been not streaming much lately, of anything really. It's just been a lot of focus on trying to work on, my choice of deck, the list, working on practicing the matchups and everything. So while I was streaming a fair bit before I went, none of it was really TCG related. I haven't really streamed much TCG stuff for a while, but I am wanting to get back into it. So I figured could just start with going over how my tournament went, and just seeing like how I'm feeling about it. And I think the feeling's good. The feeling is pretty damn good. I need to lean over. So, I've put together a little presentation for today. So, this is just sort of like giving not only me a chance to share my thoughts, opinions, my experiences at the venue, at the tournament, but also so that this time next year, when I'm in the prep for the next tournament, if I do attend, then I can look back at this and think, this is the things I could have done differently, this is the things I could have done better, these are the things I could have done more of during the prep window to put myself in a better position. So, let's start off with just how we're going to do this video. Just a brief introduction, general trips, thoughts, and all that. Talk a bit about the deck. Go a little bit into the preparation process that I went through for the tournament. Go through all of the pairings, all 8 rounds, and then just overall final thoughts. So, first off, for those who don't know me, my name's Rory. I have been playing the Pokemon TCG for a while. I started collecting around when base set released, when I was a kid, but obviously when you're a kid, it's you can't exactly put the kind of level like can't really put the amount of money and level of dedication into playing it as you can when you're older. I collected for a while when I was younger, and then when I went to university back in 2011, 2012, that's when I started to pick up playing the game again. Back in the black and white era, specifically. After I finished up with uni, moved up to Aberdeen because that's where my family was all living, and the local scene was non-existent at the time. At least I couldn't find anything. So everything kind of went on the back burner. And then not long after the pandemic sort of started to all the restrictions and that started to lift, started collecting again, and in the process of collecting, discovered that Aberdeen had a thriving scene, which is bigger now than it was when I first got back into it, but it was still pretty solid. So got back into playing around when Scarlet Violet and Paldea Evolved released. I started collecting again Scarlet Violet, and then when Paldea Evolved came out, that was around when I started playing again and going to locals and stuff. And then I sort of pushed more towards doing the higher level stuff a little bit by attending EUIC back in 2024. Went last year as well and went this year. I've been wanting to do other regionals as well, but ended up just sort of sticking to EUIC because it's the biggest one in Europe. It's the one that most of my pals in the scene that aren't in my immediate area are most likely to go to. So it seemed like a good choice. And this year was no different. Literally just finished the event just finished yesterday, and now I'm back home, and now I'm gonna, I guess, recap everything. So, general thoughts about the trip. Had a great time. Every single time, it's always a blast. There's so much to do, whether you're taking part in the main event, just coming down for the day for a spectator, or if you were playing in the main event and then didn't proceed to phase 2 and you've got the Saturday and the Sunday to yourself to just, get up to your own devices. The trek itself, it's not terrible for me personally, because it's only like about an hour and a half, or like an hour on a plane to get down to London for it, so it wasn't too bad at all. Huge shout outs to my pal Ella, who made sure I was able to get to the airport on time last Thursday. Otherwise, it would have been a lot more difficult to actually get to the airport on time. There's been a lot of random odds and sods issues with just public transport in my area with regards to getting to and from. So it saved me having to drop a stupid amount of money on getting a taxi instead. The trip back, however, my flight got delayed by 10 entire minutes, and as a result, missed my bus home, and it was the last bus of the night, so I did have to fork out for a taxi last night, which, yeah, not a fan of that, but it is what it is. But no, the venue itself was in a nice enough location. I was only about a 10-15 minute trip away from the venue as well, so getting to and from my hotel, it was a direct line. There was like the train station was maybe 5-minute walk at most away from my hotel, so getting to and from the venue was quite easy and reasonably cheap as well, which is much better than it was the first year I went, where I was basically smack bang in the middle of London and then having to go out to like Canary Wharf area for where the venue was. Speaking of the venue, let's talk about the venue a bit. The XL Centre is a really good venue for things like this. There's a lot of room, and this year the Pokemon Company International took up more room than they ever have as well for it, and it really just kind of gets this huge makeover whenever it comes to town as well, because they've got like posters up everywhere. The tables in like the general like food court areas have like Pokeballs all over them, that sort of thing. And, it's generally accessible as well. As with any convention center, stuff like the food now is pricey, but it always is. But photograph time. There's a picture of me here with Eevee down there. I'm gonna temporarily hide my camera so you can see the disembodied head of John Pikachu at the entrance to the Pokemon Center. I found my son, Bidoof. I found my guy, Chien Pao, as well. All of the design stuff inside the venue itself was just so cool. All of the queuing up side of things was handled really well, I think. Although the competitor kit collection took a long time. But to be fair, in TCG alone, there was over 5,000 players. Then you've got Unite, VGC, Pokemon Go as well, all of which will have had a stupid amount of players as well. Got some photos as well of the stage. So the top right, that's a picture of the stage on pretty much on day one, right before it got kicked off. And then I've also got a photo from the TCG Masters Finals, which was so good. And let me tell you, watching it on stream is always great because you get to see a lot of information and everything, and it's quite good. But then all of the screens in the area, there was like tons of them. There was like all over the place. There were loads of different there were loads of different screens showing the live feed as well. So you were, even if you were in the crowd, you could still see all that info and everything. But also I got to see a phenomenal matchup that resulted in what I thought was a pretty damn good result for me personally. I'll get more into that in a moment. And yeah, the photo of me with Eevee, that was part of one of the many like side event sort of things they had. They had like presentations, they had musical performances, you know, they had interviews with people, whether it was, you know, artists, you know, voice actors, musicians, content creators. They had all sorts of stuff going on the side for like the spectators and everything. Meet and greets with Pikachu and Eevee. They had so many of them as well. And I made sure on the final day, at the very least, to at least get a snap with Eevee, who's, you know, my partner's favorite Pokemon of all time. And there was also one other point as well where there on the Saturday morning, because I got in quite early for it because I wanted to do a couple of the side events. On the Saturday morning, there was a bit where Eevee was doing like a yoga routine for everyone. They had one of the people who was working the event was just sort of taking Eevee through doing different, you know, like yoga poses and stuff with everyone to just sort of kind of get everyone's day off to a nice start, which I thought was really good. And it was really inclusive as well, which I thought was one thing that I absolutely want to hammer home, is that the amount of accessibility, inclusivity, accommodations put in place for folks, regardless of disability, was really cool to see, and it was outstanding as well. For example, like they had also like the static seating areas for competitors who, you know, if they had mobility issues, then it meant, cool, rather than you having to do a massive 4,500 person shuffle every round, this is your table. You can just chill here for the day. It means that you don't have to move around if you don't want to, and if you require additional care and support, you're always in the same place. You know, stuff like that. It was really cool to see. It's been the same every year, but I think this is the first time I've really properly talked about my experiences at the venue and at the event. So I guess I'm trying to hammer that home now. Speaking of the Pokemon Center, by the way, which is phenomenal, I genuinely wish I got more photos inside the Pokemon Center, because it was great. It was a hell of an experience. I want to talk about the goodies. I got 90% of the things I wanted. I went in there with a plan of, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to try and get. And then also with the idea of, there's some things I would like, and if I don't get them, I'm not going to be too fussed. So on the right is the competitor kit. We'll talk about that in a minute. On the left, these are the things I picked up. So I got the exclusive playmat. Got a Oshawott Sitting Cutie plush so I could have it on the day, looking after me. Got a deck box, got a pack of stickers. I always get the pack of stickers because I put the one with the IC logo on it onto my binder. And I also got a Mew keychain, which isn't pictured, for Leanne as well. Roughly, I spent about 75 quid. The one thing that I didn't get, that I wanted to get, and was the one thing that was kind of like, if I don't get this, I'm not fussed, was the exclusive backpack, because the exclusive backpack looked so good, but unfortunately just wasn't able to find it anywhere. I didn't even see a point of sale for it. It was wild. Now, the competitor side of it, of all of the competitor goodie bags that they've done yet, this one I think is probably the best one. Like, the playmat is just sick. The hat is fantastic. Even the deck box and the sleeves, and even the competitor pin as well, just top notch. Just genuinely, like, a really, really, like, fantastic kit for the competitors. But yeah. Enough about the goodies, though. The meat and potatoes time. So, as you might have already gathered from the background, Mega Absol was the deck list of choice. So the process behind determining the deck list I'll go into in a minute, but this was kind of where I started off. This was about the beginning of January. I started off in this sort of section. Genuinely very consistent, very versatile, and there was a fair amount of just emergency outs. This list is like one card different from the list that Ryuki Okada used to win the Brisbane Regionals back in November. And I basically, once that regional finished, and once I'd seen how well it did, put this build together and have been taking it to locals, been playing it with friends, been playing it on the ladder quite a bit. And, you know, part of me did think, you know, I think this is definitely the deck I want to go for quite a while in advance. There was a brief period of time where I wanted to go with Chen Pao, but changed my mind there. Has a couple of cons. So the low amount of the main two Pokemon means the chances of both of them being prized is fairly reasonable. A lack of Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon, it's not the worst thing, but there are definitely times in the tournament where if I'd have gone with that build, I would have had a much better time. And, you know, searching out stadiums, searching out the mist energy, there's a couple of times where that would have been a huge benefit to me as well, but not a massive benefit. This is where I made the call. So basically the 12th of January was pretty much the day when I'm like, this is it. This is the deck I want to run. And then spent the last month or so working with two of my close friends, Ella and Lily, who have been the absolute angel and devil on my shoulders for the last month. Going through playtesting, going through potential ideas, looking at tech inclusions, that sort of thing. Working together on that. Alongside the info of the meta breakdown. So this info, pulled this straight from trainerhill.com. Great resource if you're looking to if you're trying to figure out what deck to go with, or if you're trying to look at how specific decks perform and what sorts of card counts they run on average. Because you can have a look at the top performing deck lists for a deck, and you can see, oh, it runs 2 copies of Boss's Orders, 1 copy of Professor Turo's Scenario. That doesn't mean that every deck you're ever going to play is going to be that exact list. Knowing the averages, you know, it's like, so on like the list that won this regional, you know, runs 3 copies of Arven. But on average, that deck might run 4. So you can use trainerhill.com as a resource to look at stuff like that. And the top picture here is the meta breakdown as of the 12th of all majors from the start of the Phantasmal Flames format up until the 12th for Absol. So looking at this, it's got a strong matchup against 4 of the 5 top other decks in format, which were Gardevoir, Marnie's Grimmsnarl, Dragapult, and Dusknoir. I don't know why I'm trying to remember them. They're written right there. And those 3 of them will actually go into in more detail what the actual meta spread was. But those 3 Absol has very good matchups against. Straight Gardevoir, it's a bit iffy. It goes more towards a tie than a win. Or still mostly wins, but isn't as consistent as going up against Jelly Guardy, for instance. Dragapult Dusknoir, Absol wins 56.5% of those matchups. Marnie's Grimmsnarl, it's over 60%. That level of consistency is wild. It's wild to think about. And then it actually ends up being weak against Golden Go, which is probably the most popular deck in format right now, and straight Charizard. Now, as of the 12th, Terra Charizard was kind of on the rise, and it has a good matchup against Terra Charizard, so I took that into consideration as well. So it basically meant that Raging Bolt was... No, not Raging Bolt, sorry. Golden Go was the big... was the big one to worry about. And then if you compare that to today, Grimmsnarl's up there. Terrabox is also a very good matchup for Absol. Both the Guardies are over 50. Guardy Jelly is 60%. Regular Guardy is at 53%. Zard is looking a bit better these days, but is still a positive matchup for Absol, and so is Dragapult. Golden Go as well, at this point in time, at the end of the tournament, Golden Go is swinging in favor of Absol. So at this point, having that favorability against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the top 5 decks, I feel very confident now in my choice of running Absol for the event. I might not have performed as well as I would have liked, but at the end of the tournament, the overall winner of the Masters Division was playing Absol, and they beat Golden Go in the finals, and it was incredible to watch live. I cannot stress this enough. If you ever get the chance to attend one of these events, make sure you're watching the finals, because it's such a cool experience to see it live. It's one thing watching it on stream, it's another being there. It's absolutely another being there. So this is what the Phase 1 top 6 decks were at the event. First off, shout out to my friend Steve for getting the screenshot and sending it to me on the day when I was like, can someone please send me the meta breakdown, please, for the love of God, I need to know. So Dragapult was the big one, and then Golden Go was hot on his heels. It's been Golden Go at the top of the list for a long time. For the best part of 3 months, 4 months worth of regionals and ICs, Golden Go has been either number 1 or number 2 on that list. So that was the one that I was thinking to myself, it's a weak matchup, and it's one that I am likely to encounter. So looking at this, the top 6 decks, especially if I go back, looking at the current meta state here, as of today, all of the top 6 decks that are there, with the exception of Pidgeot Charizard, were at least mostly wins for Absol. And to be honest, I'm not sure if this means all Charizards or it's only Charizard Pidgeot, because technically the Noctowl version does run Pidgeot in it, but the fact that Absol now is more likely to win than anything else against all 6 of the top 6 meta picks, which takes up that's gotta be 40% of the meta, almost half the meta. Absol was the choice. I'm going to very, very briefly skim through this section, because this is all torn straight off of the prep document that I put together for this event. You can also kind of get a glimpse into what my deck preparation process is like here, or my event preparation process is like here. So what I did was I looked at a number of different potential tech inclusions for this deck. I'm not going to go into all this detail that's like up here, because frankly, it's a lot. But, I looked at like, okay, is it worth putting a Golduck in there in case we come up against any, Dust Noir matchups that run Klefki? Toadscruel. Now this was the one that I went for. Spoiler alert, this is the inclusion that I went for. Toadscruel, great for the Golden Go matchup. Cornerstone Mask Ogopon works for the works for the Golden Go matchup, among other things. Makes it weaker in the mirror though, but overall, is a solid choice. But you have to add a different type of energy into it. It kind of gets a bit questionable. Colress's Tenacity, I was thinking, I have no solid way of searching out stadiums or missed energy. I can find supporters through Pokegear. I can find items and tools through Arven. I cannot find stadiums. There is a draw engine, but damn. Speaking of the draw engine, thought about potentially putting Cypher Maniac's code breaking in, because you literally put 2 cards to the top of your deck and then use Kangaskhan to get those specific 2 cards. So I feel like not putting this in was a bit of a miss, to be honest. Might have been worth putting 1 or 2 of these in. Especially because if you needed to use it as an Arven, you just use it as an Arven. Team Rocket's Watchtower. This was one that I also did include in the end. Very good against any decks that have colorless Pokemon that use abilities. So any of the Terra Box decks, anything with Pidgeot, anything with Blood Moon or Saluna, anything with Kangaskhan as well. It just works very well. It also helps to shut off your own abilities if you play up against Frostlass Munkidori or Marnie's Grimmsnarl. Moltres, this is a common one for the Golden Go matchup, but I didn't really feel comfortable with it. I did try this, played a fair number of games with my pals when we were testing, and frankly, it just kind of felt not as good. I think Toadscruel was the choice. Risky Ruins, I did end up putting these in as well. Just very good for any of the matchups where your opponent ends up going for direct knockouts rather than, chipping away, putting damage here, putting damage there, setting up for a knockout at a later turn, because part of our side of the coin is that we are using that Munkidori damage to move it over to your opponent's active terminal period. Instant knockout on any Pokemon. Which brings us to the final list. So compared to the previous list, Toadscruel, added Risky Ruins, Watchtower, Energy Search, not Energy Search, Energy Switch, I need to correct that, and Ultra Ball to aid with the Toadscruel. That did involve me getting rid of 2 pennies and a boss. The boss count, the gust count in general, 2 bosses and 2 counter catchers, I felt comfy with. A lot of, especially the list that came first, as well as a number of other lists, were running 3 bosses, running 4 bosses. I think maybe there was one matchup where I would have liked a 3rd boss. There was literally one game out of the, 8 rounds? At least 2 games per round. Out of the 20 games that I played, there was only really 1 or 2 games where I was like, I would like a 3rd boss's orders, please. And almost every time, it's when I used a boss's orders when I could have used a counter catcher, but chose to use the boss instead, or didn't quite have the means to fish out the counter catcher. So I do feel comfy with this list. Comparing this to Edwin's list, Edwin was the guy that won the whole thing. He ran 2 Toadschools instead of 1. So because I was running a 1-1 line, getting it set up was a lot more difficult. But I do feel like I'm quite happy with the fact that I went for Toad Scroll in the first place. I definitely do feel like that second Toad Scroll was needed. Let's talk about how the rounds went, though. So Golden Go was the first, and it was the only Golden Go that I played against, and it was rough. One Toad just wasn't enough. It just kept on getting bossed, not even counter, it was just boss. But it was like, boss's orders, the Toad School, like, cool, thanks. So I just never got the Toad Scroll active, which this was the matchup that Toad Scroll was designed for, essentially. I had a strategy in mind for this matchup going into it, and practiced it, and practiced it, and practiced it. Much to the dismay of my pals. And I got to a point where I was winning more often than not. And I just didn't use the same strategy. My mind blanked. Both games I did manage to get at least like one swing off with Absol, but Absol doesn't do enough damage to Golden Go to knock it out. So it's an awkward one as a result. And on top of that, both games that I did get Absol set up, it maybe got one or two swings in before getting knocked out. So, not great. 2 losses, lost both games. 1 loss so far. Raging Bolt is statistically the worst matchup for Absol. Point blank, it's like a 30%, which is madness. It's a 30%. And the first game was just they just killed 2 megas, and that was all they had to do. There's nothing I could do about that. I heard the phrase "burst raw" so many times during that game, though, because they know don't leave damage on Absol. That's the only way that Absol can properly get a quick knockout on a Raging Bolt, is leaving damage on it. So if you leave damage on it, it was a tough matchup, and there were definitely times where I was like being able to use Risky Ruins to generate damage on my own side of the field to move it over with Monkey Dory afterwards. You know, I wish I'd been able to set that up more frequently and a lot sooner, but just didn't happen. Game 2, it was a bit of a slow setup for them, and it was a quick setup for me, and I was able to get down to, I think it ended up being like I think it was like 3 prizes to 4, I want to say. So I had the lead before they managed to take the Absol down. And at that point, I had to look through their discard, realize that their Professor Turos and their Prime Catcher were gone. I don't know. I think they actually said they didn't have any Professor Turo in the deck. They only had Prime Catcher as a means of getting the active out of the active and back onto the bench. So as soon as they played it like early, I'm like, cool. Give me that Latias clutch. Give me that. And then got to a point where my opponent just conceded that game because they thought that they had a chance to get another quick win in to finish up the series. And then by the time we started game 3, there was only 8 minutes on the clock, so I just went straight into that retreat lock strategy that has served me so well over the last few months and just secured a tie. I think the phrase, "what a shit way to end a match," was used. Which, fair, but also, I'm going to take a draw against the Raging Bolt any day of the week. Gardevoir was my first victory, as it should be. I got a fairly quick setup and just chipped away at them while they were getting a slow setup and I was slowing them down. They did manage to get Gardevoir set up, so they were able to take some prizes, but for the most part, I just had too much of a controlling lead. And I think the one thing they did wrong in that first game was not conceding sooner, because it meant that the second game, there wasn't as much time left, and as a result, it meant it was very likely that I would be able to draw it out. Game 2 was a bit flipped on its head, so took me a bit longer to get set up, but I was able to get set up without taking any massive hits for it. while they had a fairly quick setup, but I noticed very quickly one of the first things that they did was they discarded the only copy of Professor Turo's scenario, which I think I have one right here, which is hilarious. Which is a very good card, where you basically just move one of your Pokemon from play and put it back in your hand. You got to discard all of the cards attached to it, but you just put it back in his hand. But as a result of them getting rid of that, it just made it very easy for me to just target specific Pokemon and hit them with clutch, draw out the game, wait for them to leave energy in play, and once they left energy in play as well, I could just use Boss, use Counter Catcher to grab something from the bench and be like, cool, that's staying inactive now. And it basically went to time again, so that was the second game that went to time. And because I'd won game 1, victory. The next match lasted 15 minutes. It was a mirror match, and I immediately left the venue to go get food. It was awful. This was I have not played many Absol mirror matches. I've really not. I need to play more of them, to be honest. But I basically was starting off dead hands. Game 1, I lost the coin toss, which is a bad thing for an Absol matchup anyway. But not only did I lose the coin toss, but I had dead hands from the start. No way of shuffling my hand into my deck or anything like that. No Iono, no Lily's Determination, no sign of any supporters except for Xerosix. And they set up Sandy Shocks. Now, Sandy Shocks was a very, very weird tech inclusion, I thought. It worked for them. They ended up making day 2 and not doing too badly. I think they went like 8-4-1. So I think I looked it up and I think they went like 8-4-1 or 8-4-2 or something, which is, not bad. No, Sandy Shocks was a weird thing to see. But it was just like, it got set up way before I did. It just kept on cleaning house. And then game 2, I had a chance to get things going. Ended up choosing the wrong card with Claw of Darkness to discard. And just ended up watching them use Penny to get rid of their Kangaskhan. And all the damage I just did before just destroying me from there. I've put underneath that Sandy Shocks because... and then also playmat. So this player came and sat down and then just started shuffling and like laying everything, like his deck down and everything. I'm like, he didn't have a playmat. He got to day 2 of the biggest Pokemon tournament in history. Literally the biggest Pokemon tournament that's ever happened. And he got to day 2 of it and he didn't have a playmat. He literally showed up, destroyed me in 15 minutes, left, didn't elaborate further. At this point, 4 rounds in, I'm already at the cusp. I'm already on the bubble for getting into phase 2. I needed a record of 5-2-1 or better. I have the 2-1 already. So it needs to be a 5, or it's not going to be phase 2. So which means I have to win 4 matches on the bounce at this point. Which I started doing with Zoroark. Now Zoroark is generally an unfavored matchup for Absol. And I took it 2-0. This was like above and beyond me going from being absolutely defeated in the worst way possible to winning in the best way possible. This was a masterclass in using clutch, in controlling the board state, making it so that my opponent couldn't do anything, and making sure that I was in complete control the whole matchup, and I stayed that way took it to 2 wins, including one of them being a deck out win, which I thought was amazing. I've written here, overconfidence is highly abusable. So the first thing that my opponent said was he wanted me to roll dice to see who would win. And I'm like, no, we're playing. I came here to play. I'm not getting knocked out of the tournament on a dice roll. So that, first of all, refused that. I'm like, no. And then also just general overconfidence. Like, just all of, like, his movements with his cards and everything, just overly flashy, like, just fanning out his hand across the playmat. And just, and then, like, just generally a prick. No, I'm not gonna lie. Just generally just not... He was nice enough, but, like, in his play style and how he played and everything, he didn't say a word, right? One of the first things he said was, there's 45 seconds left of the round. Like... I don't get it. Just tell me what you're doing. Like, I know what you're doing when you do things, but just any amount of, I'm going to play this, would be just superb. I stuck to my usual Zoroark game plan, though, which is get some useful stuff done with Absol, and then just once Absol's down, clutch. The combination of the volume of stuff that he used to trade with, as well as using Claw of Darkness, led to a massively open door for clutch. Not to mention the fact that I, for the first time in the tournament, was able to get Toadscruel set up, which is a beautiful thing. It basically meant that the Pecharunt in his discard couldn't be brought back with Night Stretcher. And the Professor Turo that he discarded earlier on meant that he had no way of getting that Reshiram out of active. He eventually got close to decking out and scooped. He basically decked out. Like, he'd used several Ionos and was cycling through again and again and did nothing. So I'm calling that a deck out. Game 2 was much different. I was able to get Absol comfortably set up, but at the same time, my opponent was able to get it set up very quickly and was able to take advantage of that. So I pivoted to the clutch strategy in a lot worse of a position than I did in Game 1, to the point where Game 2, I didn't use any... I didn't take any price cards in Game 2. None. And I still won the game. Like, I don't know what to say. I was concerned, though, because I didn't see a single Professor Turo in that game. Not one. But then, because I had to pivot to the clutch lock, and if he had it, then I at least had a backup Yveltal. And if he had another one, then I could have done something. I would have been swinging for 300 at that point with Pecharunt. So it would have been something. But no Turo. Nothing. Told me afterwards, both were prized. But I already knew. Because at one point, when the deck got so thin, he essentially drew into his entire deck. There was one card left in the deck, and he played Iono, and then got down to being low on the deck again. And then just that was it. Wasn't able to get the win. So like I said, being overconfident, it's a highly abusable thing in this game. It really is. Miraidon showed up. What? A comfortable matchup for Absol, I found. Put no time or effort into prepping for Miraidon, so I had to learn this one on the fly, but it was quite comfy. Basically, they went straight into Iron Hands to get rid of Psyduck, so Psyduck has the damp ability, which I have one right here. Has the damp ability, which prevents any abilities where your opponent knocks himself out for a benefit. And Miraidon famously runs the Surging Sparks Magneton, which knocks itself out to attach a stupid amount of energy to any of its benched electric Pokemon. Or is it? I can't remember if it's any energy to electric Pokemon or electric energy to any Pokemon. It's one or the other. But I was like, cool, well, the duck's going down, and then they bossed up the Psyduck to swing into it with Iron Hands. But they put all of their eggs into that one basket. They also had a Terrapagos. No, that was a different game. Sorry, I'm thinking of a side event game. They also started charging up Miraidon as well, and the problem is they couldn't get Miraidon charged up fast enough, so they started swinging with Iron Hands into the Absol. The problem is, Absol famously runs Monkey Dory. Iron Hands has 230 hit points, so one Monkey Dory is enough to turn that Claw of Darkness into a one-hit KO, plus letting me discard something from your hand. So it very, very quickly just took game very quickly. Game 2, it was very similar, but at one point I wasn't able to get Psyduck back out of the discard. Well and truly overthought the process and ended up being like, I need to just gust something up and stall. But I could have literally just like gusted up a different thing and killed the Iron Hands, for instance. There and then, it was already ready to go. And I just basically lost because of that. But it was a very quick loss, at least. Game 3, very similar to the first game, but the electric generator RNG was truly, truly god-awful for my opponent. We were laughing about that a lot, to be fair. He was a really nice guy. But that, combined with how consistent Absol is with getting set up, it was a very quick Game 3. This is the end of my run. Round 7, Chaladon. Lost 2 games on the bounce. First and foremost, easily the friendliest player I met in the tournament. Such a lovely guy. We spent the whole time just laughing and joking, and then me and him both knew one of the head judges. But like separately, like, me and him didn't even know each other, but me and him both go way back with friend of the channel, Quirky Geek, Becky. We somehow both go way back with her, and it was fun to connect over that. I haven't played against our Chaladon since Surging Sparks, or since Journey Together, more accurately, when it was kind of paired with Hopzation. So my brain did not function for this, and it was 7 rounds deep at that point. Looking back the next day and speaking with one of the guys from my locals that attended, the game plan should have been so clear. That should have just been Monkey Dory, terminal period, every day of the week. There was no reason to go any other game plan. Both Kangaskhan priced game 2, and I got a double price loss because I used Fezzendipity's Flip the Script and drew 4 cards instead of 3. So that sucked. It went from being the point where I thought it might be winnable in that game and maybe even eke out a draw, or potentially a quick game 3 because there was still a fair chunk of time left, to it being that they just had game on board. So as soon as I ended my turn, they were just like, yeah, cool, bosh. As a result of losing this, it mathematically eliminated me from Phase 2, which sucks. But round 7 out of 8 being when I'm eliminated from Phase 2 it's something, you know? It's the furthest I've ever gotten without being mathematically eliminated. And then round 8, I was tired. It was a long day. I was not focused. It should have been a slam dunk. It should have been a free win. But I was very tired. Both Kangaskhan reprised again. 2 games on the bounce, which I hate. I was playing very sloppily. Should have attached Mist Energy to Absol, but because I didn't, and because I didn't target down the Mew when it was available to be knocked out, it basically meant that I was in trouble. Because Mew's attack, Genome hacking, copies one of your opponent's attacks. And since Absol has your opponent's Pokemon is instantly knocked out. Like, rough. Genuinely rough. Really, really lovely player, though. No, she was really friendly. Had a laugh and a joke, and it was a lot more relaxed. Because anytime you're past that point of being, mathematically viable to get into phase 2, you take your foot off the gas a bit, You chill out a bit more. It's more of a game because you're playing for fun, maybe for some form of placement, but for the most part, you're just kind of trying to enjoy the last of the round. But yeah, emphasis on relaxed. I was far too relaxed, and I was not even remotely focused. I was just like, I'm tired. I want food. I want to go home. But yeah, just a swing and a miss that matchup. Second game as well, they took Absol down with Absol's own attack before I even had all 3 energy on it. It was literally like turn 2. It was literally like, no, it was turn 2. It was literally their second turn that they just immediately just nuked my Absol from orbit. It was very rough. Overall, final scores. Final placement out of 4,000 and change. 2140. About halfway, middle of the pack. Pretty much the same performance as the last 2 years, placement-wise. 10 points total, so I was 2 wins, or 6 points short of qualifying for Phase 2. But I tied with my performance last year, but with playing 1 less round, which I think is pretty good. I got a draw against Raging Bolt. Famously the worst matchup. The worst matchup for this for this deck. And I got a draw out of it. So that I'll chalk that up as a win any day. This is also the furthest I've ever been at EUIC before being knocked out. And somehow, across the day, only 1 duplicate matchup in the form of Gardevoir. And I didn't see a single Dragapult, Charizard, or Barney's Grimmsnarl the entire day. Which, considering that 30-something% of the meta share was those 3 decks, the fact I didn't see 1 across 8 rounds of play is just truly staggering. Which sucks, because all 3 of those decks are not bad matchups for Absol. So, final thoughts? Yeah, I'm proud. I'm proud of how I did. I thought I did really well. All things considered. There was definitely a number of places in the tournament where I misplayed. I think everyone at that level, it takes a certain skill level of player to never misplay. Simply put. It was rough when I did misplay, but for the most part, I think I did alright. 3 wins. It's pretty good, and still being in with a shot to make Phase 2 in the penultimate round of the phase I'm really happy with that. That's definitely something I'm really happy about. The tournament itself, There was things I could have done better. There was things I could have done worse. I think the prep, I was in the right mindset with the way that I prepared. Did I end up with the best possible deck? No. There was definitely things that now, looking back, I could tweak. But I'm happy with the amount of prep we put in. And I'm glad that for the third year out of 3 of me attending EUIC, that my deck choices ended up at least in the finals. And the second year out of 3 that my deck choice has been the winner of the tournament. So, you know, that's something. It says a lot about my ability to read the room and decide what is going to be the play. I had a great time, you know. I met up with a bunch of folks. I managed to get my fair share of side events in. Ate far too much food somehow, despite it being as expensive as it was. And just overall, you know, just had a really, really good time. And I cannot wait to do it again next year. I would like to potentially, now that my work schedule has changed, potentially look at doing more regionals throughout the year. I think I said this exact same thing last year, but didn't quite work out. But I think with the way that my work schedule has changed this year, it's a lot more feasible for me to get the time off I need to attend, which is nice. And somehow that includes that. Somehow that's happened, and I'm working more hours on average in a week. Go figure. Just overall fantastic time though. I highly recommend, even if it's something that's, you know, feasible for you to attend either as a competitor or a spectator, I highly recommend ICs. They are such good events. Especially just getting to like be in the atmosphere and everything was truly phenomenal. Overall, just had a really good time. Yeah. Can't really add much more to that, really. Just a great time, great location. I'm praying it's still in London next year. But it's been in London for 4 years now. I have a sneaking suspicion that it won't be in London next year. It might be, though. It would be nice. Yeah, I think that comfortably sums up my thoughts and experience at EUIC. Yeah. I'm thinking I'm going to be putting a bit more of a focus on TCG this year. I think I kind of strayed a little bit last year where I kind of went, like, I took a break over the summer and then came back around the Mega Evolution time. Ended up spending a bunch of time playing Satisfactory, which I will still play Satisfactory. It's a very good game. But could I have put more time and effort into being on the ladder? Probably. There was a number of misplays that I could have avoided by spending a bit more time practicing, but the last 2 weeks or so, it's just not been possible with the release of Ascended Heroes because it wasn't legal for the tournament, but it's legal on PTCG Live, so getting that practice in was not happening. But yeah, I think the recording for the video section of this is reaching an hour, so I feel like that's a good time to stop recording. So anyone that is somehow watched all of this on YouTube and got to the end of this, thanks. Like and subscribe.